Sorry, I'm in my dunk tank clothes today.
No worries.
Get dunked. I'm going to get dunked for Humane Society.
Yeah, no, I seen that in some Fort Hope. But hello everyone and welcome back to the show. So on Friday, June 18th, Premier Ford shuffled his cabinet and brought in some new people, including David Piccini, who was appointed Minister of Environment, Conservation, and Parks. David's also the MPP for Northumberland, Peterborough South. So hello, David. Thanks for joining me and congratulations.
Thanks for having me, Wyatt. It's good to see you.
So, just what was your immediate reaction? I know it's been just over a week now, but what was your immediate reaction when being asked by the premier to serve as Minister of Environment?
Well, I was when I picked up the phone on Friday, I was actually in a meeting and I had a call come in and stepped out, and it was a bit overwhelming, to be honest. I was incredibly honored with this opportunity. It's exciting for me as Ontario's youngest environment minister ever, to have this opportunity to tackle what is very much a generational issue for our age, and not just for people my age, but your generation and beyond, to build a more sustainable future, to tackle climate change, to look at building a greener future. So I was thrilled at the opportunity. I know we're doing a lot of exciting things on the environment plan with the largest freshwater cleanup of its kind, with expanding the green belt, doing things like preserving our wetlands. So I was really, really excited at this opportunity. But honestly, at that very moment, it was a bit surreal. It didn't really sink in why until I got into the new office this week, and you sort of sit there and you see that this is your office and the ministry, and you've got things to tackle immediately. So it's finally sunk in this week. But that first day was special because it was good to be with colleagues in the constituency office. That's really where I am today. Would not be where I am with if not for the incredible constituency team that we have, and then obviously family who popped in.
Okay, and I know you've only been in this position for around 1 week, but is there anything that you're working on or that you're looking forward to kind of begin working on?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple things. So the first decision I made as environment minister was to expand the waterfront trail. This has been something that's been going on for over 20 years in Pickering. A good friend and constituent of mine, former Minister Pauline Browse, had been working on that. So that was big. One of the things I'm most excited about is growing our parks footprint. I'm an avid parks goer. I look like I'm about to head out to a park. It's actually to support our Humane Society in the dunk tank, but I'm a big parks goer. I hike Killarney Park, love Presqu'île in our own backyard. Obviously, we've got a number of great conservation spaces as well in our community. So I'm looking to expand our parks footprint, make them more accessible for everyday Ontarians. We're doing some exciting stuff with the website booking system as well, and then beyond that, I think there's so many things to touch on life. But I was just out of the hydrogen working group. We've got a number of industry experts on the hydrogen working group looking at fuel cell technologies, looking at how to build a cleaner future. So our hydrogen strategy has been really exciting, and in addition, I would say. Beyond that, we've got some really good freshwater projects to clean up, obviously the largest one of its kind in Lake Ontario. And there's so many things to do and just not enough time to do it.
Okay, and so my next question, David, is climate change is going to be a problem that you will, as the new minister, have responsibility for and have to try and stop. So, what will be some of Ontario's next steps at combating climate change and protecting our environment?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, we're doing a number of things, for example, with our electric vehicle strategy. I would say first, investing in that strategy, our hydrogen working group can help inform that, but supporting the EV strategy, we've seen massive investments, both from government, but most importantly from the private sector into the electric vehicle growth to take our cars off the roads and to help put in electric vehicle infrastructure and get EVs on the road. But in addition, we've grown public transit to help reduce gridlock and congestion. We know that is a contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And so expanding public transit, obviously the Scarborough line, the Ontario line, the GO Transit expansion, out east is a huge piece. In addition, we're doing some exciting things. Industry In the industrial sector is another contributor as well. And we're working closely with industry on things like low carbon steel creation, working with our partners in the steel industry here in Ontario, and that's really exciting. So I think we've got a lot of expansion to do there. And there's a number of other things that we're working on, obviously, with our waste. Methane, that's a contributor as well. We're looking at diverting waste. We're obviously have done some important work on recycling in this province. So lots more to do, but it's just been 7 days on the job, and I'm looking forward to some great conversations I've had with stakeholders at new and innovative ideas to tackle that. But I think at its core, in addition to climate change, clean water, clean air, and important natural spaces, biodiversity is going to be critical for our next steps forward.
Okay, and so I know your government is trying to promote your Made in Ontario Environment Plan. So for people listening, what is the Made in Ontario Environment Plan and what does it do?
So it's a great question. So at its core, it's about clean, green growth. So it's about clean water. As I said, the largest freshwater cleanup of its kind. For years, people talked about what we can do, but we didn't do anything. So we've partnered with partners like Pollution Probe with their litter traps, for example, that are taking microplastics and litter out of our water. I mean, that can disrupt biodiversity and ecosystems in the lake. And we're studying it. So it's not just about these blanket punitive policies. It's about actually studying where these source pollutants come from and then working with industry to help get rid of them. And then the second thing I would add to obviously the clean water piece is on setting standards, working with our upper lower tier levels of government on sewage. I mean, we took immediate steps, obviously, with the sewage that was being dumped into Lake Ontario out of Hamilton, and worked closely with partners to address that. And that's about setting some rigorous standards there on that as well, which is really important. For land, obviously, we're growing the green belt. We're working as well with the forestry sector on tree planting. We've seen trees at a specific life cycle are important to sequestering carbon. So we're working to expand the green belt. We've launched consultations for what could be the largest expansion of the green belt in Ontario's history. I mean, this is critical. Growing the parks. I don't know if you knew, but we haven't had any parks expansion in this province in over 40 years. And as someone who likes the outdoors and who wants, our natural habitat and to preserve our biodiversity, species at risk, I'm excited to getting out and doing more on that too. And finally, while I would say that with species at risk and wetlands, just launched a $6 million project with Ducks Unlimited to protect our wetlands. And we're also doing important work with species at risk as well to preserve them, because it's not a question of an either or. I think we can strategically grow transit-centered communities to have people taking public transit, to growing around those communities while also preserving wetlands, expanding their functions, also preserving species at risk and making considerate efforts to protect them and to grow their habitat.
Okay, and so in addition to your new role as Minister of Environment, you of course are also still the MPP, and I know you have been really reassuring your constituents that they are your main priority. I know, for example, after this interview, you're going to a fundraiser, as you mentioned, for the Humane Society in Port Hope, I believe. So I'm going to ask you some local questions. So how will you make sure, David, that you can kind of balance your ministry role and your role as MPP?
Well, I think that it's first and foremost, I get elected by the people in this community. So that's my number one priority is representing and serving the people that elected me and in the community that we represent. I'd like to think that I've, hopefully set a good example in the 3 years that I've been in, getting to all corners of this riding. One of the first MPPs to ever start pop-up offices, to hold, most recently the pop-up in Hiawatha First Nation, and getting out into the community, doing a number of teletown halls, and really, making sure that it's our community's voice that's heard at Queen's Park. But for me, I mean, you've got to balance it. You've got to get out in your community, as I said, Saturday, which most people, as they head into their weekend, it's some time for me. It's a great time to get out in the community to support the local fundraiser. I'm also heading out to see a strawberry farm, a small business, a local farm that's doing a great job later this afternoon with one of our local mayors. So there's lots of things to still do for our community. We've set some big goals. We've grown our hospital footprint. We've built record numbers of long-term care beds, expanded affordable housing in Newcastle, for example, with Parkview, accessible housing for seniors, expanding the GO to Bowmanville to serve our community, looking at important partnerships with industry like Algoma Orchards to invest in the most modern technology, which is going to create jobs and ensure that the great apples we have in our Quaker Oats, which are made locally, continue to get shipped worldwide. So there's a lot of exciting things I'm working on locally. As we go forward, obviously GO is one into Northumberland. That's a priority for me, looking at Campbellford Memorial redevelopment, looking at growing the number of long-term care spaces in our riding, supporting our small businesses. The Rural Opportunities Tax Credit is one. So lots more to do, and folks locally are going to see a lot of me.
Okay, and so one more question, David. So we know that the next election is just under a year away, so the candidates for our riding are beginning to receive nominations. But what would you say to voters 1 year before the election?
Well, I mean, I think, the beauty of our country is that we have elections, and you take it to the people to restore their confidence and ultimately put it to them on whether or not you're doing a good job. I'm happy for whomever gets nominated, wish them the best of luck. It takes a lot of courage and strength to put your name on the ballot. I'm, quite confident in what we've been doing as a government. I'm proud of the efforts we've made locally, and it's not because of me or my government, but when we got elected, we made a point to restore trust and accountability, to really get out there in our community. And I think over the last 3 years, I've hoped to have earned the confidence of this community. Getting out in our community, we've seen record investments brought into this area that's growing. I look back to why I ran and to previous governments. I mean, record amount of spending, but why we didn't have much to show for it locally. Fast forward to today, we've got hospice in Clarington. We've got a record number of hospices in our community. We're expanding our hospitals. We've accelerated the GO expansion. We fixed the medium and small sized hospital funding formula. We've got more long-term care beds in construction in our region and in our community than we saw in the previous 10 years. And for our next generation, education is so important. We've expanded the number of nursing seats. That's the next generation of nurses. Free PSW training, have grown. Obviously, important investments in agriculture, like I mentioned at Algoma Orchard, and done important things across our riding to support culture, arts, and tourism. Brand new rec center in Campbellford, for example, for our Campbellford Rebels, and making important investments to support our seniors as well with Parkview, for example, in Newcastle. So there's just so much. I can't fit it all in one interview with you, but I think everywhere we look, I mean, my real piece is action versus platitudes and rhetoric. And I think if you look around, we've seen the action, we've seen tangibly things getting done in this community. And I hope to have the confidence of our community once again. But in the meantime, continuing to work over the next year, working on the environment portfolio, and really excited to engage our youth on the climate change and the environment portfolio as well.
Okay, and just one final follow-up. Do you have any lessons or takeaways that you've learned so far from your first weekend as Minister of Environment?
That's a really good question. I think one of the things that my takeaway after the first week is that we've got a number of experts in the ministry and across Ontario, and it's through leaning. I don't think, Wyatt, to be blunt and frank with you, that in 10 months before the next election as environment minister, that I can't do any of this alone. I need to lean on the expertise within the own ministry and obviously our stakeholders. And we've got some remarkable ones. Just sitting yesterday in the hydrogen working group, our parks working group, our conservation authority working group, just engaging expertise and I think sound and good public policy comes from our stakeholders. So for me, the takeaway over a very busy first week, as important as the briefings were, the number one takeaway was the importance of engaging our stakeholders in this sector. And boy, do we have quite a few of them. And environment, why, one thing, if you ask me sort of what I probably know now that maybe I didn't truly grasp in earnest when I started, was how much environment in this ministry touches everything. Obviously, environment is critical to our future. I understand that. But with respect to the regulations, with respect to the number of regulations and powers that this ministry can exert, really touch everything. And so in the first week, I've had a flurry of calls from other cabinet colleagues, members from across Ontario, to help with local projects. So for me, it's really exciting how we can touch so many different files and touch all corners of this province. And on a personal note, I'm really looking forward to getting out and seeing some of our wonderful parks in this province as well. That really excites me.
All right, David. Well, that was my final question. So thanks for joining me again today.
Thanks very much for having me, Wyatt. Good to see you.
You too.